Welcome to Critical Junction, Episode 7. I'm Mark.
I am Luke.
And joining us once again is our friend Jill. Hey, Jill, thanks for being here.
Hello.
Okay, so with Christmas right around the corner, we thought it would be appropriate to talk about religion and all of that, whatever that entails. So I just wanted to start off the episode with a couple of quotes here. The first one is from Sam Harris, who we mentioned pretty frequently on the show. One of my personal favorites, the author of The End of Faith, The Moral Landscape, Free Will, you name it, a bunch of other books. What he says here, quote, "It is time we admitted, from kings to presidents on down, that there is no evidence that any of our books was authored by the creator of the universe. The Bible, it seems certain, was the work of sand-strewn men and women who thought the earth was flat and for whom a wheelbarrow would have been a breathtaking example of emerging technology. To rely on such a document as the basis for our worldview, however heroic the efforts of redactors, is to repudiate 2,000 years of civilizing insights that the human mind has only just begun to inscribe upon itself through secular politics and scientific culture. We will see that the greatest problem confronting civilization is not merely religious extremism. Rather, it is the larger set of cultural and intellectual accommodations we have made to faith itself." And the second quote is from Christopher Hitchens, another one of my favorites, the author of God
Peace be upon him.
Yep, peace be upon him. God, ironically, rest his soul. Christopher Hitchens, author of God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. Quote, "The mildest criticism of religion is also the most radical and the most devastating one. Religion is man-made. Even the men who made it cannot agree on what their prophets or redeemers or gurus actually said or did. Still less can they hope to tell us the meaning of their religions or tell us the meaning of later discoveries and developments which were, when they began, either obstructed by the religions or denounced by them. And yet, the believers still claim to know. Not just to know, but to know everything. Not just to know that God exists and that he created and supervised the whole enterprise, but also to know that also to know what he demands of us, from our diet to our observances to our sexual morality." So, what do you guys think? Where do you want to start? Jill, what's your position on the debate?
Well, I think Hitchens' quote at the end speaks to one of the main issues I have with religion and why I consider myself irreligious, is the idea of knowing everything or claiming to know things that you clearly can't know. I just am not uncomfortable saying I don't know. But I do know that I disagree with people who claim to know something when I know they can't know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you know you can't know things.
I know I can't know things, and there are certain things that I know that you can't know.
Well, I think that's an important point to make. Like, the default position on any claim without evidence should be "I don't know." Like, that is a perfectly acceptable answer to anything, right? I don't know.
Right.
And the moment someone starts making a claim on something is when the burden of proof gets placed on them. So if you're going to make a claim about the creator of the universe, you'd better have some damn good evidence to back up what you're saying. So my position is very similar to yours, Jill. Like, I identify as an atheist because the God claims have nobody who has made a God claim has yet been able to match or meet the burden of proof to back that up. What do you think?
Where do you sit on this, Luke?
Well, I was thinking about it on the way over, and it sort of depends how. Okay, if we're talking about religion, we're not talking about the existence of God and things like that. We're talking about religion here, right?
Sure.
And so, I guess I kind of feel that anything that comes to exist too long, structures itself, becomes a dead thing, you know? Like, so we could look at anything, like structures in society and stuff like that, you know? The same thing holds, I find.
Dogmas.
Yeah, dogmas. I mean, it's bad stuff. As soon as it becomes dogmatic, then it sucks shit, and it misses the point altogether, you know? It's not...
A dogma is... It seems like you're saying that a dogma is it starts off as a structure that we might construct rationally, but for which we've lost the will to look back and actually consider the reasoning or the justifications for the system that we built together. So now we're just relying on the system because it's a system that exists.
Yeah.
It's there to use but we're no longer feeding into it. We're no longer justifying it anymore. And
It's
So-
no longer a malleable system,
Right.
so it sucks.
So
you know?
just a self-perpetuating institution that just exists for the sake of its own existence.
I mean,
Okay.
Well, I mean, for other sakes, I'm sure as well. Power.
Power, yeah. Well, certainly, certain religions are more detrimental, I think, than others. Like Sam Harris brings up the example of Jainism a lot in his talks. Like you'll never find the more extreme a Jain gets, the more peaceful he or
Yeah.
she is.
To the point where they're sweeping away the bugs in front of them while they walk.
Exactly.
and
Like
stuff that.
I remember a few years ago that Kleenex commercial that came out where there was a guy who looked like a monk, sweeping stuff around, getting rid of a spider that he saw, moving it to wherever, and then he blows his nose and looks at the Kleenex package and it like kills 99% of germs and he freaks out. Yeah, that's a Jain. So they are 100% non-violent, right? They'll wear a face mask for fear of inhaling a bug, kind of thing. So they're fine. I'm not worried about the Jains.
Well, okay, so right, like I'm thinking of something like Buddhism or Taoism and stuff like that. Are we considering them those religions in this sense, or are they more philosophies here? Like,
yeah,
because
people
I-
seem to give them a pass, and they have a reputation for being
like they
like
would
the
work.
good ones.
They would work on other planets. They're not specific to Earth in that sense. Does
I'm
that
not
make
sure I
sense?
follow.
The other religions are human based, are they not? They have to do.
But
no?
I don't understand how those ones aren't human based. Aren't they all human?
Well, I mean that the philosophy itself would translate to life on another planet. Like it translates to, it's universal, I guess you
How
could
do
say.
you know that?
Well, it's the philosophy of it, the structure. Like it's basically Buddhism, for example, just lays out a structure on developing compassion and controlling your mind. Like, and that's
Mhm.
basically what it's saying there. Focus, learn to focus, and be compassionate. And like in a sense, it's just saying, and you figure it out for yourself, kind of thing. But just follow these rules and do that. So it's not really. I don't know if we're considering it a religion.
I think it's valid to think that those particular religions are more amenable to that kind of benign practice of the religion or understanding of the religion. But I know that those religions, like Buddhism in particular, they also can be made more dogmatic and have these very elaborate kind of arbitrary mythologies around them, and
Right, they become something else.
and we do know of societies of adherents that actually do carry out war, just like any other society and things like that, right? Like in is it Indonesia or in Southeast Asia? There's places where the Buddhists and the non-Buddhists have been warring, so it's not like they're a completely peaceful religion either, and it's not like you can't be unpeaceful if you adhere to that religion.
I find we're constantly accusing the religion, but in a sense, it's kind of like capitalism. Capitalism itself may not be bad, but it's what we've done with it, right? Like, can we not agree that, in a sense, religion itself and the underlying messages of religion isn't necessarily bad?
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that it's circumstantial and it depends on the religion you're talking about. I'm going to bring up the topic of Islam, regardless of how controversial this may seem, but certain people are more prone to take certain actions than others, like, go out and blow up a building or whatever. And religions like Islam facilitate that just by the message within it, right? Islam, at its core, has some very, very dangerous ideas behind it, like conquering by the sword and that kind of jihadist mentality, right? People who are more prone to that activity will accept that more readily than some others, and they'll accept it because it's part of their religion, and they will carry out those acts because the religion facilitates it. So I don't think what you're saying is necessarily 100% universally true.
But is that not the individual facilitating it there? Like, I'm thinking of what I've read in terms of religions and stuff. That I'm not getting any violent message from any of these religions.
Have you read the Bible?
I've read parts of it. I can't say that I've read. I mean, the Bible, yes, but if we're talking about the Islamic Bible,
the Bible condones slavery. The Bible condones stoning.
Well,
people
sure,
to death.
but I'm also not taking it literally. Like, it's a parable to me. It's a.
Well, okay. Well, if the creator of the universe was going to come down and write his instructions for his people, why would he do it in a parable? Why not just go out and say what he meant and not mince words with all these ridiculous stories about you can own slaves between this time and this time as long as you don't kill them within 6 days, and if they, it seems completely ridiculous to me.
Well, is that not just parables from the time? And I think also,
well, of course it's parables from the time, and that's why I'm bothered by people who take this as the word of God,
right?
Because it is just people, like, the Bible was written by people who didn't understand how the sun rose in the morning, or where the moon went, or why the tides came in, and they created stories and parables to try to explain it. And as we evolved as a species and gained more understanding of the natural world, that kind of thinking should have gone by the wayside. But instead, religions took a foothold and started, I guess, for a lack of a better term, brainwashing people into believing it for, I don't know what, for power or whatever.
I think of Socrates and how he didn't like writing anything down because he felt like that was killing it, kind of thing. And we could kind of say that with religion. As soon as it's written down on paper,
right.
It's fucked.
That's a good point. Because as soon as you write it down, it becomes canonical and it becomes religious law, if you will.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, I guess what I'm getting at is that the people that these religions are often based on, Muhammad, Jesus, and all that stuff. Like, it's not as if they were. It's not as if the religion was their idea. Almost, you could say. It went somewhere else with people that didn't have their experiences. Yet we're basing it on these people and following these people around by, like, the whole idea of following Jesus around, like emulating Jesus and stuff like that. Like,
what would Jesus do?
What would Jesus do? Yeah.
No, we don't know because we haven't proven the historical existence of a Jesus figure yet.
No, but in a sense, we could say that Jesus, the parable of Jesus, is a man that lived well. He did it right, kind of thing, And so we're looking back in honor, thinking that guy did it right. It doesn't really make sense to emulate someone else. We're supposed to do it ourselves.
Well, exactly.
I mean, this is what Buddha, for example, is constantly saying. Like, you got to figure this shit out for yourself.
Right.
I can show you this stuff, and I'm telling you, this is how you do it.
Well, and to some extent, I think in the theology, even of Christianity, at least by some interpretations, they're trying to do that too. They're suggesting, like with the God and Jesus are inside you. They're suggesting that this divinity should be something that comes out of yourself. If you have faith, it's supposed to be deep, and you're supposed to be, again, trying to emulate what's represented in the
To me, it seemed more the case that you're supposed to emulate if you're not there already. You might as well just do it. Like, just do this if you haven't figured it out yet. Until you figure it out.
I think something that we're not taking into consideration is the reasoning behind why people should try to emulate people like Jesus, right? Especially if they're adherents to Christianity. Using that specific example, the reason why they're told to live a good life and to follow the teachings of Jesus is out of concern of what happens to them after they die. Right? It's not really about love thy neighbor for the sake of loving thy neighbor. It's love thy neighbor so you can go to heaven when you die. And like this, Christianity, to me, reeks of a death cult that is just, if they're completely focused on death and what happens after death, that they completely miss out on the one life we know we have.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that differs in Buddhism. They would claim, no, this is it. This is what we get. There is no afterlife.
Isn't reincarnation a Buddhist?
Well,
concept?
I think the idea is there that there is only one consciousness. So consciousness itself is in all of us, kind of thing. And so
Prove it.
But it's not about proof, though.
Yes,
like,
it is.
No,
it is. The burden of proof always resides on the person making the claim. So if you're going to make that claim that there is one consciousness, prove it.
So let's say
the
proof then is in your experience, and
no,
that you have to.
I don't give a fuck what my experience is. I give a fuck about reality and truth.
No, but let's say
no. But if you're gonna claim there's one consciousness, one universal consciousness, prove it. Where's your evidence for that claim?
So what if the evidence lays in you doing something, and you have to, in a sense, do it? So your proof. So the proof is laid out. Let's say Buddhism. Buddhism.
It's not proof. It's if it's me doing something, I'm doing something. There's no evidence to say that what I'm doing is being influenced by a universal consciousness. I'm doing things because I'm alive and acting within natural reality.
How do you know that?
Now you're talking about solipsism. And no, you cannot disprove solipsism.
And I actually have no problem with solipsism. Let's say it is one consciousness, then it is solipsist. Like, we are each other, and we just don't know it. Could this not be a possibility?
You can't argue against solipsism. There's no logical way to do it. So I can't know that for sure.
Yeah, I know that Wittgenstein had a problem with solipsism, but I didn't really understand why. But he refused to say it was solipsism, but I don't exactly know why. Like, I would have to say honestly that coming here, I wasn't sure what I was going to declare. Am I atheist? Am I agnostic? Or am I can't say that I believe in God, but it depends how we're defining God. You know, if we're looking at it, I think it is a possibility that there is one consciousness and that
What are you
that
basing
it is
that on?
shared. I would have to say my entire life experience.
But your experience doesn't necessarily equate to truth.
No, I know.
Observable, objective truth.
No, you're right, and I'm not declaring it as a truth or anything like that, because
So is it a belief then?
it's a belief from. That's the thing.
So why do you believe
if it's
it?
a belief, I don't hold on to my beliefs. My beliefs change moment to moment. You know.
But why do you believe them?
Well, I don't necessarily. I can believe them in the moment, and then the next moment not.
Okay, well I guess that's... So what are you basing that change in belief on though? What is
Which belief are we talking about here?
In general, like if let's say belief in universal consciousness, are you admitting that as a belief though?
Am I admitting that as a belief? Yeah, sometimes I guess I experience that.
Okay, so why?
Why? I have religious experiences, and I come out of it having felt that
So you're basing it on something you feel.
It's not only feeling though; it's also thoughts.
So I'm not seeing an ounce of credibility in what you're saying though. Like what is it that would prove? Because I'm like I said, I'm concerned with the truth in reality. Right?
Well, you're not, but you're concerned with a proof of the truth. Of
Yeah,
reality.
because evidence-based, rational, skeptical thinking is our best way to interpret our natural reality, right? So using that method, I want to examine what it is people believe and why they believe it.
So why? Let me ask you this: why do you not believe?
It's not a matter of
that-
not believing. It's a matter of I don't know. And if you're going to make a claim about reality,
the
you should
nature
back
of
it up.
reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you're going to make a claim about the nature of reality, the nature of the universe, you should back it up. Because it's up to you to prove it. It's not up to me to disprove what you're saying, because you're the one saying
No,
it.
but I guess what I'm saying is you are arguing from the perspective of, not believing.
No, I'm not. I'm arguing from the position of, you're the one making that claim. Convince me. Convince me you're right. So far, I've seen nothing that convinces me of that.
Well, okay, so there are no closed systems, right? But we imagine things with our language to be all closed systems.
How do you know there are no closed systems? Have you been able to find a closed system to which to compare a non-closed system to?
Would we be able to? Is there
That's what I'm asking.
is there something
No, you
alone
just-
in a vacuum?
No, you just said there are no closed systems.
But have we ever experienced any sort of
That's
closed?
what I'm asking.
Is there a closed system? Like, let's say looking at science.
Well, that's
the
what
world of
I'm
science.
asking. Like, have you found anything to compare a non-closed and a closed system to?
Well, no, because if let's say there was no closed system,
So why
how
did
would
you
we
make
have
that
something
claim?
to compare it to?
So why would you make that claim then?
Because I read it. But can you think of, like, for example, okay, let's look at science.
Mhm.
When we get to the microscopic level, or when we get down real small,
Mhm.
is that idea of nothing is actually touching anything else. Like, does it not even structurally seem to be just one thing?
What do you mean by one thing?
Yeah, I can't really
There's
even
like
say
you're
that.
saying there's like a fabric to the universe and everything's made of that.
That fabric. I shouldn't say one thing, because it's not one thing. It's a collection of things working together.
Well, what do you mean?
It's almost to say I feel that things are both at the same time. So they are both one thing and separate things.
Okay.
Sort of like light being both a particle and a wave. Like, things can be more than one thing. They can be, No.
Yeah. Well, if you're talking on the the particle level, then your example of the photon is correct. It does act as both a wave and a particle. But how does that translate to the macro universe?
Well, when we get down
where's this argument going?
Well, I guess I was trying to use science there to suggest that
some reason for thinking that everything could be connected and therefore sharing a consciousness.
Yeah.
So far, there's been no evidence to back that up. And if you think there is, give it to me.
I don't think it's a it's I don't know. I mean, there can't be any proof, right? How could there be?
Well, that's what in the absence of proof, the default position should be I don't know.
Right. But I feel like we claim we don't know, but I don't think we think that we don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Everybody who claims that they don't know, actually everybody who claims that they know something don't necessarily know that.
Mm-hmm. You can never know something 100%.
Right, exactly. So there's like a measure of degree to certainty.
Sure.
And knowledge.
Yeah, like certain things require less evidence than others. Like if I were to hold up this water bottle, the burden of proof to demonstrate that I'm holding up a water bottle is very, very tiny in comparison to a claim about the creator of the universe or a universal consciousness, right? I can point to this bottle, I can hand it off to you and say, this is a water bottle, here it is, you know it's there, you can feel it, you can touch it, it's observable in reality, it's a natural object. But if you're going to make the more grandiose the claims, the more evidence you require in order to believe it.
Sure, but if you go to something more abstract, like thinking that a liberal government would be more effective or beneficial than a conservative one or an NDP one, those are claims that don't match knowledge. Like that, you don't know 100%, and yet you're not agnostic about it. You're not like 100%. You're not perfectly on the fence on those things just because you can't know them.
Yeah, right? But when it comes to things like political ideology, you can weigh that based on what would be, in your best interest, and that would be your measure of why you would select one political party over another.
But wouldn't the experiences that we have, even if they're only in our own mind, and the impressions that we get from the cause and effect that we observe, wouldn't those be sufficient to make sort of an educated guess, or at least make a nearly completely arbitrary choice and say, I think it could be that the entire universe is one consciousness?
Well, I think it would depend. Like you can have, based on experience, personal experience and whatever, you can make a guess as to the nature of the universe, but if you're going to make that claim about consciousness or whatever, then you should have something to back that up, right? Because that's a very specific claim that's not exactly rooted in existence or experience, rather. It's something that would have to be demonstratable. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because if you're just...
I would want to say that before jumping right away to presenting or demanding proof for that impression or that guess, I would just want to ask for the experience that suggests it to that person, or to you, Luke, if you wanna represent that concept. What would be the experience that you've had that suggests?
Well, hold on.
A single cause without actually asking for proof. What are the things that make? That's what I would want to ask.
I don't think that's enough, because just by
it might not be enough, but could we not just start there before?
Yeah, it's a good starting point.
Because then you can maybe see if those experiences are supportable with proof.
Sure.
Yourself.
Okay, yeah,
so you kind of circuitous.
I can agree with that.
Can I just admit that I do have a problem with any time that I do believe something?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
I don't see it as a good thing. It's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing.
Like it's something to let go of, kind of thing.
But the things that you do believe, do you believe them to be 100% kind of random choices rather than things that you think are somehow supportable by your experience?
I think that they are supportable by experience, sure. But even so, to be conscious of something is immediately a problem, in a sense. I wish I could talk about Rogue One, because there's this bit in it. But
is it a major spoiler?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then never mind. Move on, Luke.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, so have you guys ever believed in God? As a child and stuff? Okay, yeah.
I was raised Catholic. I would consider myself to have been a fundamentalist Christian for a few years.
Oh, really?
Holy cow, really?
Yeah. I was hardcore Jesus guy in high school for a little bit.
So what happened to that guy? What got you out of it?
What got me out of that? Just reading the Bible and finding just how atrocious some of God's demands were, or just some of the stuff in there. Like, I'll use the classic example of the Bible condoning slavery, or the Bible condoning killing people who work on the Sabbath. To me, that was just completely inhumane and immoral.
This reminds me so much of my mom.
And it's offensive to consider it inspired by God or the Word of God.
Exactly. What kind of fucked up monster of a God would demand that kind of thing?
This reminds me of my mom. She bought a children's Bible when I was a kid, when she used to read to me, and this is one of my early memories of her bringing out the children's Bible. And I guess she thought maybe they'd smooth things out, But she starts reading it and goes, "Hold on a second," skips ahead, "Barbarians!" She slams the book closed and fucking chucks it across the room. And she
didn't know, so she didn't grow up.
I don't know what she was. I guess because I asked her later in life, like, so what did you think? And she said, like, I just thought they'd take out all the bad shit, kind of thing. But no, they're still cutting babies in half and stuff like that.
Yeah, demanding child sacrifice. Like, okay, there are a couple of stories in the Bible that just blew my mind. The whole, Abraham almost sacrificing his son, and God being like, "Whoa, dude, no, I didn't mean that shit." Like, why would you do that in the first place? Like, why would you, like...
What about Job?
Exactly. That
like,
was my next
lifelong torture.
Yeah, like, if you're the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of the universe, why would you put someone through that knowing full well what the end result would be? There's no reason to make this dude suffer for his entire life as a test of his faith. Because you're God, you know what's going to happen to him, and yet you're going to throw all this crap at him anyway. Like, that's just... come on now. That was, to me, if that's not the kind of God I would want to worship or end up in the afterlife with, to be perfectly honest. Like, I'm sorry to my Catholic family, but, like, no, it's not for me.
Yeah, like, I'm trying to remember, I think it was grade 7, first year of high school or whatever, Quebec side, and that's when I denounced religion, like, because I was going to a Catholic school, Darcy McGee and stuff, and I was in the religion class, and I remember... maybe a few weeks in, and I kind of just in my mind went, no, I can't take this religion class anymore. And so I ended up switching over to the class that they just called moral class.
Yeah,
right.
And so then they're just using Jesus as the example. So it changed nothing,
Yeah, I had the same experience in high school. I started out with a religion class, and like, dude, no. Because, I don't know, I think my religion teacher was just weird to begin with, so I switched to the moral class, and there, you can't get away from it. You're just using Jesus as the example now. Like, hello, Catholic school. But yeah, so I was a Christian for a little while, then I, dabbled in some other Eastern philosophies, and just, that didn't make sense to me either, so then I, kind of started relying on critical thinking, reason, and logic to analyze my place in the universe. What about you, You said you were also...
Yeah, I was raised Catholic. I went through all the sacraments. But I probably started questioning the existence of God and the validity of religion very young. Probably third grade, I remember having an argument with my sister. I think I had to prove that I wasn't lying about something. So somebody brought up, okay, well, if you're telling the truth, then put your hand on this Bible and swear to God, and so for my little sister, who definitely believed at that time, and, ostensibly my mother believed too, as far as I knew, she didn't deviate from the Christian doctrine, or Catholic doctrine specifically. But anyway, for me, it didn't seem like much of a risk to put my hand on that Bible and spew complete bullshit.
So
And I had
lying?
no fear.
Were you lying? Is that...
Oh yeah, I was completely lying. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, this story doesn't make me look very good, but
Well,
I think that's one of the earliest examples of me being utterly of completely rejecting religion or the concept of God and theism. Yeah. And, it just kind of went on from there. And so I too started looking into other sources for to justify morality and ethics and meaning for life. And
See, that's where I think we differ a little bit, because I was never too concerned about the moral aspect of religion. To me,
wow, that's funny. That's like my top
that's interesting.
concern where it is.
Yeah, because that's never why I turned to religion in the first place. I wanted to know the truth about the universe and where we are, where we came from, why we're here, that kind of thing. Morality was kind of secondary to that pursuit. Yeah,
I think the reason why that wasn't the main thing that religion was supposed to be informative about for me was because I already had an idea that that's not what religion was for. So, like, I grew up with parents who had an appreciation for science and, would watch documentaries with us and things like that. So I had this sense that, and I guess the Bible even itself wasn't presented to me as a literalist in a literalist context. So it wasn't presented to me as like literal truths, even things like God creating the earth in 6 days. It was taught to me not with the idea that this is literally true.
Right.
Even as a young kid,
right.
Whether I knew what the word literal meant or not, I knew that this was just kind of like a fictional story.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, there was no conflict there between religion and science at that time, because religion wasn't making scientific claims insofar as religion was presented to me.
Let's talk about that for a second. The conflict between religion and science. A lot of people who are of a religious persuasion would say that there is no conflict. One that attempts to answer certain questions, the other questions. What do you guys think? Is there a conflict between science and religion?
I think there absolutely is a conflict.
I would absolutely agree with that.
Because ironically, even though I take religion to be more of morality concerned issue, I also consider morality to be informed by science.
Yeah, I see no conflict, for example, with Buddhism and science. They go hand in hand.
Going back to Buddhism, are we?
Well, no,
sure,
they do go hand in hand with science. Like, they're up on it. He's not only talking with religious leaders, but he's going up and Dalai Lama, let's say.
Right.
He's going up and he's educating himself in terms of science. He's talking to scientists. He's working it into Buddhism.
You could probably say the same thing about Catholicism, because they have the Vatican Observatory and their science department, however strange that may seem. So they're
They seem really slow.
They're
a little more retarded than Buddhism, I'd have to say. I mean, in terms of time. It takes them a long time.
So literally retarded.
Yes, literally retarded.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you, Joel. I think there's absolutely a conflict between religion and science, because both attempt to answer questions about the fundamental nature of the universe, right? Mm-hmm. And where, how, and why it came to be. Science has its theories, and religion says God did it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is completely untestable, right? There's no evidence that God created the universe in 7 days, if you want to take the Bible literally.
Yeah, I always wondered what it would change anyways. Like, what difference would it make if there was a God or not a God? And how would we live any differently? Like, really? Let's say we find out there was a God tomorrow. Okay.
Well, isn't that something that suggests that there isn't a God? If you think about, whether or not you would live differently if there were no God, assuming you do believe there's a God right off the bat, then if you think that without a God I would be living exactly the same way, then that kind of suggests that God is like a superfluous
Yeah, it's not
proposition.
needed, sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like with Occam's razor,
Get rid.
get rid of it.
Yeah. I guess that kind of indirectly raises the question of Pascal's wager. What if we're wrong and we put all our money on the wrong horse? What happens then? But I think Pascal's wager in itself is flawed because, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not completely 100% literate on Pascal's wager, but it assumes that the Christian God is the correct one. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that in itself is a flaw in the wager. Like, well, why?
Yeah, and Christianity itself has a million different sects. So, what if you're wrong about which Christianity you're following?
Or like, what if you're wrong and Zeus is the creator of the universe and you didn't bet on him? So
the odds against you are astronomical.
Yeah, if there was a God, there would be nothing outside of God, I guess, right? Like, everything would be God?
By some ideas of God.
According to some definitions, I guess. But
some like, I think most Christians would actually think that's heresy.
Yeah.
That's that idea that everything is God is definitely more of a modern.
Is it?
Modern kind of like a
take on God,
more liberal, spiritual kind of take on.
Let's talk about liberal spirituality for a second, because I think I know where you're going with this. I've seen a lot of people who replace the word God with the word universe.
Yeah.
And essentially, they mean the same thing. The universe is not a conscious entity that you can have a conversation with.
Hold on, you're making a declaration there.
Yeah, prove it.
Yeah, prove it. No, it's true though.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Like, you are coming from a direction there, is what I'm getting at, right?
Sure. There is no evidence to suggest that the universe is a conscious entity you can have a conversation with. How about that? Let's go with that.
You're having a conversation with us right now.
You're not the universe.
How do you know? Prove it.
Prove it.
Okay. But to get back to the point I was trying to make, thanks a lot. I can't even remember where I was going with that. Yeah, a lot of people are replacing the word God with the word universe.
Yeah.
And that's I disagree with them on that fact, because it's the same idea. Like, why not just be a Christian then, or why not just be a Muslim if you're making that claim?
Yeah.
To me, it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Praying to the cosmos, thinking that
to me it feels too much like wanting to have your cake and eat it too. You don't want to seem like one of those dogmatists with these conservative and traditionalist kind of dogmatic views, but you want to believe in the same thing, and you want
a free pass without calling yourself religious.
Yeah, and so to me, I just wonder, like, if you think God is synonymous with the universe, then why use the more loaded of the two terminologies?
Right. Why not just say God if that's what you want to believe in?
Sure, or why not just say universe?
Oh, yeah.
Why do you have to say God when you know that there's a few billion people out there that want to go, aha!
Right.
Yeah, right. It becomes an ill word that you don't want to use.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think the more people embrace that philosophy of the universe as a spiritual thing, the less the word universe actually tends to mean. Unless you're, like, strictly speaking in scientific terms, it's like using the word genius. Like, that is a genius idea. Like, the word genius is gradually losing its meaning.
Its luster. Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, like, I picked up 2 tickets to...
Or things like awesome,
right.
Amazing. Like, those words don't mean what they originally...
It's epic. This is epic. This one right
epic.
here?
It's not epic. Like, I picked up 2 tickets to Rogue One tomorrow. You want to come? Dude, that's genius. No, it isn't. It's fortuitous, if anything. Yeah.
So what do you think about just the idea of divinity providing meaning and conceiving of the universe in these kind of spiritual terms, or spirituality in general being a source of meaning for people's lives?
I think spirituality is becoming a useless term. What is spiritual, right? Mm-hmm. And the more you pick it apart, the less it matters. because you can get the same results by just being a decent person and accepting the reality that you live in, right? To your point, when you said something about divinity giving people meaning, is that what you said?
Yeah.
So what kind of meaning would divinity give people?
I don't know
the
off the
morality
top.
crutch kind of thing.
Sure, there's the more and I'm not even sure why morality is considered an answer to the meaning question, but yeah, I don't know why it is, and I'm not sure I understand it, and maybe that's why I'm not a believer. But yeah, it's I mean, I'm sure you've heard that too, that if there's no God, then there's no meaning to anything, and then what's the point,
Right.
I never really understood that.
Yeah.
Really? Like that's what they're holding on to kind of thing?
Yeah,
right.
That's along the same vein as, if there's no God, then I can just go out and murder people with no consequences.
So why would you do that?
Are you telling me the only reason you're not going out and murdering people right now is because you think that a God exists?
Right.
Yeah, that's scary, eh?
Yeah,
that's pretty scary. Yeah. That people can actually.
But here's another case of, does that person actually believe that?
No, yeah.
They don't actually believe
they're
that.
lying both to us and themselves.
Yeah. This brings up another thing. I don't think people actually know themselves. Does this make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't actually know what we want, really.
Mm-hmm.
We may have some inklings and create wants and stuff like that, but we don't actually know ourselves. If that makes any sense. I don't really know what people are talking about when they talk about spiritual. Like, what are they getting at here?
Well, like the knowing. I think that's an interesting point that you raise. If we can't know ourselves, what makes us think that we can know for certain that there's a creator God or whatever? Like, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, immediately we brought up, like, I think one of your first points was, we just can't know things. Like, we're not knowing machines. So we can't even really make declarations of any sort, can we?
We can know things within a certain degree of probability of it being true, but we can never know 100% accurately that something is completely true.
We can never be certain.
Yeah.
I wondered about this myself when I was a kid, on certainty sort of thing. And the only thing that I felt I could possibly be certain of was caring. That I care.
And how can you be certain of that? What's to say?
Yeah,
funny.
No, you're right. How can I be
certain? You're like a more motherly Descartes, basically.
I care. Yeah, right. Well,
I care, therefore I am. If ever we get T-shirts, that's going on one of them.
I do like that thought better than I think, therefore I am. Have you ever heard Lacan's version is exactly where I think I am is exactly where I'm not. Like, as soon as you think you know, that's exactly where you don't. I should not be quoting Lacan, that's for sure. I have his book at home, and I have no fucking clue what that guy's talking about. And his graphs, what the fuck?
But you used that example because you figured it spoke to the point that was being discussed. What can you explain that a little bit more, or at least your understanding of it?
Yeah, I have no idea.
No,
where
okay.
I was going with it.
Okay.
Can anyone make anything of what I'm saying? No.
Okay, because we started with the idea of knowing that you care as being like something that you know about yourself, or
right, yeah. And it is true. Like, for example,
and you said you prefer that to the thinking thing because, and I guess that's what led to your example of Lacan, because thinking is less reliable since if you believe that passage, or
I guess neither is 100% reliable. There is no certainty to be found. But can I say that I'm certain that I feel something?
I think you can.
Like, I am certain that I love Gilles, kind of thing.
Do it.
Aww.
But do you, though?
And how would I prove that, right? Even if it were the case.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it were true, I wouldn't be able to prove it.
See, I think there are certain things that we can accept with, like you were saying earlier, without necessarily a need for 100% or as close to 100% accurate provability. Is that a word? I'm going to go with it. It's a word
is now.
like your emotions. You know you're feeling a certain thing, right? But those things are internal to you. But then how does it translate to the external universe? Like how can you demonstrate with 100% accuracy or near 100% accuracy that you feel a certain way to someone else? Are we getting too philosophical about this?
I guess you know what, but there is no solidity to even feeling. Like I'm feeling something, but then that's gone. By the time I've announced it, it's now another feeling altogether. It's not actually a solid thing.
You're feeling something about your having said that you feel something.
And now that I've felt it, it's now something else kind of thing. Like it's constant. It continues kind of thing.
Constant state of flux.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like that whole.
We're feeling machines.
We're not knowing machines.
We're not knowing machines.
Certainly not knowing machines.
I think we're certainly thinking machines and feeling machines.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not.
You can be both.
You most definitely we are both.
Okay. So going back to meaning, how do you see or understand the concept of meaning, or do you see any use to the concept? And what's your answer to the idea of whether or not the universe has a meaning, or what does the universe mean, or what does life mean?
Asking if the universe has meaning is like asking what the color of jealousy is. The question makes no sense.
Right, it's just not the right question.
I don't see meaning in the universe. The universe as a thing has no purpose, as far as we know.
Mm-hmm.
It has no direction. It has no cause. Well, it has a cause. Sorry, never mind that part. But it has no purpose. And asking what meaning there is, I think that becomes a question of what do you place meaning in? Like, what is it that means something to you personally? And to me, it's understanding, it's knowledge, it's trying to assimilate as much accurate information about my place in the universe as I can get, and comparing that to observable realities and testable realities, and just seeing if my internal reality meshes as closely to the external reality as I can get. I don't know if that answers your question. But...
A little.
Yeah.
I think, that sounds a lot more like meaning being a completely subjective thing rather than the objective part of the ontology that other people seem to pretend it is.
Yeah, I don't know. Computers doing things.
Okay.
Sure. No, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. What's your thought on the meaning question?
Well, we endow things with meaning. I don't really.
It's something that humans project.
Yeah, we project it.
Yeah.
So
I think this perspective draws one of those clear lines between theists and non-theists. Theists believe that that meaning somehow lies outside of people, and that's why they think in terms of like creationism and things being created for some purpose. The whole teleological paradigm. And I think non-theists are just comfortable understanding that something might not have a purpose.
Right. I think you're absolutely right on that. Like you're saying, theists like to believe that there is meaning outside of themselves, just as you said, right? But they have not been able to come up with any proof of that claim. If you're gonna if you believe that there is meaning outside of yourself, if there is a purpose to the universe, what is it? And how can you demonstrate that to be true?
And that's where the big G comes in, right?
Well, hold on though. Let's say
it's like a catch-all.
Can we take the message of Jesus?
He's endowing
he's endowing meaning on life by claiming compassion's the way to go, right? Am I wrong here? Love is the answer, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he's giving it meaning. He's not saying it's there. He's saying it's given meaning. Like we've given.
Okay.
Am I wrong here?
That's interesting. So
he's claiming that is the meaning of life.
So the good news is that we can now. Okay. So you're saying the good news is that we can now ascribe meaning to all of this.
Yeah, and the meaning is this: love, compassion. Like it's
Right.
not the idea of when you die you go to heaven. I always saw him as an engineer of consciousness. Like he's going, no, we have to design heaven, and here's how you do it. Kind of thing. And it's the future, basically, like designing the future. No.
Yeah, but Jesus is the Son of God. He's like a human manifestation of God. So again, that meaning is provided from the outside. He's not saying that we invest meaning, which is actually what meaning is. Meaning is something that individuals invest subjectively. According to me, this is.
I agree with that.
What I always interpreted the idea of God from the Jesus perspective. Let's say Jesus talking about God. I always interpret it as, in a sense, he was basically just saying, "It's not me. It's this other thing beyond me." And that's all I really thought he meant by God.
Well, that was the longest debate in early Christianity, is whether or not to ascribe divinity to Jesus, or if Jesus was a prophet of the divine. And eventually, I think it was during the Council of Nicaea, but I could be wrong about that. They decided, yes, Jesus is divine. They made a decree right then and there, after gathering a bunch of different leaders.
We have decided.
Yeah, we have decided Jesus will be divine from that point forward, and it became canon law, or part of the canon, rather.
Well, what the decision there, I guess, is that we've decided to view him as divine.
Well, yeah, that was the decision that was made. So, if that was a man-made decision...
Yeah, right, it doesn't make it so.
No.
We've decided he is a Moshishi. We've decided Jesus is a Moshishi. Let's collectively decide that.
Like, there was also a debate as to the virgin birth. Was the Immaculate Conception, did that mean she was a virgin, or did that mean that she was touched by God? Let's say she was a virgin, because then we can ascribe a miracle to it, and thus prop ourselves up as being super cool, cosmic, god-like things.
That actually raises another question for me. Does the aversion, or at least the sort of the criminalization of sexuality in Christian doctrine, does that precede coming up with the whole virgin birth thing, or is it a result of the whole virgin birth thing?
I don't know.
Doesn't the whole virgin birth thing come from some other fable, like?
And actually,
thousands of years.
It came from Isis and Osiris.
Right.
Yeah.
It was just a passed on parable once again.
Well, there are a lot of passed on parables.
It might not have come from there. They might have emerged independently.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I'll retract that and say it's one of the leading stories that they borrowed.
Sure. But it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that scholars of the era would not have been aware of this stuff that preceded it by thousands of years. So I don't know. Meaning is
ascribed, right? We've decided.
Meaning is ascribed.
We've decided.
We have decided.
Okay, so that
it is now
that's
canon.
all of our positions. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so then, for the three of us, religion doesn't offer meaning because.
Not to me.
Because meaning comes from within us.
Yeah.
So is that why we reject religion? Or are there other reasons?
I'm not claiming to reject
religion.
And
you don't claim to reject religion.
If I'm able to...
But you don't ascribe to any one kind of solid doctrine.
Well, I lean towards the Eastern philosophies, but I see them more as philosophies than religion.
Yeah, you see it as a grab bag
of goodies.
Of
grab bag of mental goodies.
That's what I'm saying.
And most of those goodies lead to abandoning them altogether. Like, that is where Buddhism teaches you to, in a sense, not follow Buddhism. Like, let go of even that.
Right.
Like, once you've let go of all the other things, now let go of that. And now let go of letting go, kind of thing. So it's transcendental, I guess,
Yeah.
Well, I reject religion whole cloth because I see no need for it. Like, I can get... Sure, there are nuggets of wisdom in a lot of religions and a lot of philosophies, but I can take that at face value and I can find that just within myself, right? Like, I don't need the Bible or the Quran or any other holy book to be a moral compass for me because I have my own moral compass. I know, like, if I accept the definition of morality as being something that's that's in keeping with the well-being of myself and those around me, then I don't need a book to tell me that. Like, I don't need something to tell me do this for the sake of
So what if there's people who can't find contentment and fulfillment without some type of formalized structure?
Yeah,
like religion?
I did always see religion as a crutch, basically, for the meek.
Sure.
But does that invalidate it, or is that basically a point in its favor for those people who need that kind of thing to be able to feel fulfillment or contentment? Is it a useful tool?
I think for a little while it can be, as long as those people are encouraged to look outside that religion and to see if they can find whatever it is they were looking for in the religion without it. I think it's like there are some good stories in religion to follow, or not follow, but to absorb and know about. But the moment you start going beyond that and accepting religion as your moral guide, let's say, or the reason why you do a thing, then you start getting into some muddy waters, I think. I think personally religions are dangerous. Some religions more dangerous than others because they permit certain actions or prevent certain actions. A lot of people who are religious end up focusing more on the afterlife, what happens after you die, like I was saying in the beginning, and they miss out on the one life that we know of that we have, and they put all their emphasis on, I have to do this for the sake of going to heaven when I die, or I don't want to go to hell, and that's where it becomes dangerous, is what I'm saying, because you're not living authentically, you're not living your life anymore, you're living out of fear for what your imagined deity will do to you if you disobey these laws.
Yeah, and it's sort of a way to circumvent or it sort of short circuits your concern for real world consequences.
Exactly.
Right? You're unconcerned with real world consequences when those are the only consequences that do matter. I mean, those are what consequences are.
For example,
those things that happen in the real world when you
exactly. Yeah, like for example, Jehovah's Witnesses letting their children die because they don't believe in a simple blood transfusion that could have saved their lives. That's a real world consequence, and that's the result of a religious belief. And that's something else
you were saying, though, it reminds me of this book called The Pagan Christ by somebody, I think his name was Tom Harper, and he was an Anglican priest, actually. The book has some contentious ideas about how Christianity borrows from past myths, like what you were talking about with Osiris, and so there's like how Egyptian mythology and maybe Mithraism and stuff like that might have fed into what was constructed to become Christianity. So some of that is contentious, but the more kind of overarching point to his book was that he was able to conceive of the religion that he was basically a spokesman for in a purely mythical sense, and so his whole point was to kind of talk about or teach about the importance of myth and mythology and how myth can be informative and can shape someone's worldview and
inspire.
To me and inspire, and to me I think that's kind of a great message. It's what we were talking about earlier about dogma. Or was this even before the show that we were talking about?
No. I believe it's at the beginning.
Yeah.
We were talking about dogma.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna go that route, why not just teach myth then? Why not teach religion as myth?
Exactly. That's my question. Like, people need to project some kind of authority of literalism or something onto myth, and they don't see the idea of myth itself as being compelling enough, or
Right.
to be authoritative.
Sure. No, I think I know what you're saying. Like, let's take an example of, I don't know, Harry Potter. People read that and they're like, I wish this was true. I wish I had a Hogwarts letter and all that kind of jazz. And I think that you can apply that same type of thinking to people who read mythology and want something more out of it. They would like these gods to be real. They would like them to be kind of the cosmic babysitter watching over them at all times. And eventually people try to incorporate that into their lives to the point where it becomes a religion. And I think that's how some religions get started, probably.
Yeah, they just happen.
Over time. Over
they
time.
structure themselves and gradually become a thing.
But just because something is old and tenacious doesn't mean it's worthy.
Right.
To quote Tim Minchin.
Tim Minchin says that?
Yeah.
That guy's funny.
It is.
So I don't know. Are we against dogma?
I am.
Like in general, yeah. Like that's the general problem. Overcoming dogma, in a sense.
It's one of the problems, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of
I don't want to.
Looking at religion.
I agree. I definitely am against dogma, but I also wouldn't want to suggest by that I'm unconcerned with the actual content of the scripture and the
right.
The
Well,
doctrine.
The idea of the myth, like looking at it as a myth, that was a good point.
No, but also like you touched on that earlier, the idea that there are specific things that are called for in these different religions, or in their scripture, that are just morally unsupportable or repugnant to most.
Right.
And and
the examples that you gave were relative to the time and just not relative anymore, sort of thing. Right.
relevant to the
time, slaves,
right,
stuff like that.
I don't care at what point they were relevant. The fact that it's in there is what bothers me. And the fact that people accept these books as something to be their guide in life.
Right, a concrete guide
to
life, like giving you all the answers.
Well, that's kind of funny, actually. I was watching Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that stop motion film from the 60s, and there's definite red flags in there that show where it's from, or the time that it's from. Things like, okay, well, I guess the first thing we got to do is get the women out of here. Like after they fight the abominable snowman, the first thing we got to do is get the women saved. And then there's just attitudes about the reindeer who's different, and how he should be shunned. And the overarching kind of moral of the story is beneficial or is beneficent, or I'm going to say benign at least. But there's these little things that are just purely just evidence of the cultural context in which this thing was made. But that you're not supposed to latch onto or take away as the main lesson. There's actual good stuff to be drawn out of there, despite these little.
Right. So in that sense, there's good things to extract from religion.
Right.
There's things that can inspire us, kind of thing.
But the thing is, those good things can be taken without religion. They can be learned through other means.
Sure.
Which to me invalidates religion and makes it completely pointless.
We can't say it's pointless. It's like saying we can hammer without a hammer. Like religion as a tool can still be used. But that's what I was kind of leading to earlier, with the idea that maybe religion is useful for a certain kind of person
for whom it's totally uncompelling to just say that this particular lesson here has some justification that me and you can reason on a one-on-one kind of basis, rather than to have something more cultural and systemic something that has some kind of systemic support behind it, and that's what they need to be able to have some kind of cohesive worldview. They have to have a fully formed structure, a scaffold, basically. They have to avail themselves that kind of a scaffolding.
Sounds terrible.
Sure.
That's an interesting point. I think I'd have to think about that for a little while longer. But
Daniel Dennett's breaking the spell.
good suggestion.
That's what he's on about, right?
Yeah,
About whether breaking the spell actually is something we should seek, because maybe there is a use, at least for a part of humanity.
It's entirely
a use
possible.
for religion.
But my first instinct is to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Religion had its time. I think we can teach those those morals and those values through other means that don't necessitate all the dogma and all the crazy bullshit that comes with religion. But on the other hand, like you're saying, maybe religion is useful to a certain type of person. Maybe we're not there yet.
Yeah.
As a collective species, maybe we're not at the point where we can just toss religion out whole cloth and just accept reality as it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's certainly true in a lot of places. As sad as I think it is personally,
but still, that's their belief that they can't let go of it.
Right.
It may not actually even be true.
Yeah.
It's not a truth. It's their internal truth that's not true.
Huh? It's their internal truth that's not true. Oh, they discount their internal truth, and that's why they feel like they need an outside truth, because it's like a sort of insecurities about their sinful nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're just over the hour mark now. I think. Do you guys have any parting thoughts?
Well, it seems like we're not in agreement with religion, is what we're getting at, or dogma. I would suggest.
No, I'm not in agreement with religion. I'm an atheist. I'm putting that right out there. I'm not in agreement with religion.
Not all the religions have a god. Like Buddhism and Taoism don't.
And it becomes a philosophy, I think.
So it's not a religion.
I would say no.
Mm-hmm.
So religion, we're speaking only of God.
God or gods.
God or gods.
Or any, organized system of belief revolving around something supernatural. Is that fair?
Sure.
God is supernatural.
Mm-hmm. Can you have a philosophy that involves the supernatural that could not be called a religion?
I don't know, can it?
Well, religion is just numbers, is it not? Like, it's a cult beforehand, and then it becomes a religion.
That's a fair point.
Is that not how it works? Like, basically, you're a cult until you have enough members, and then you're a religion, kind of thing. Like, I believe now the spaghetti guy, the spaghetti monster, is that now a religion?
The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster is a recognized religion in the U.S.
Due to numbers.
In the U.S.?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think this is that's just like an arbitrary choice by states, by like nation states. I
don't know if you looked into the religious laws here, but it's virtually impossible to start a new religion in Canada, at least in Ontario. It's really, really difficult. You have to be a registered charity. You have to have a certain criteria met. You have to have a set of beliefs. You have to have a certain number of people. Yeah, laws are crazy.
Mm.
As much as we are a religiously tolerant country, we're not accepting of new religions as much as the U.S. is. In the U.S., John Oliver created the Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption as a church, like that on one of his episodes.
Just to see if he could make up something that could be tax exempt.
Yeah, we don't have that liberty as much. We can do it, but it's a lot more difficult. Like the Church of Wicca, for example, they were recognized in Canada as a religion for a few years until
and then
they lost it. Yeah, I don't think they're recognized anymore. I could be wrong about that. I need to look it up, but last time I checked, I think they were deregistered with the CRA or something.
Is there a god there in this?
Yeah, they have the goddess and the god acting as cohorts.
I don't know much about the Wiccan religion. We'll call it a religion anyway.
Yeah. that could be another episode. Because I can go on a few rants about that. Yeah, so, Jill, any parting words?
I guess my own position on religion is that I'm not very partial to it, but I'm willing to entertain the thought that some people might need it.
That's fair. Okay. I think that would be a good place to wrap it up in that case. Just a few closing words. This will be our final episode of the year. Christmas is coming, and then we have New Year's, so we're all going to be drunk and celebrating with family and friends.
God.
And no. But we will be back in 2017 with a host of new episodes and new topics to cover. But for now, this has been Critical Junction Episode 7. I'm Mark.
I'm Luke.
And Jill, thank you as always for being here. We hope to have you on again in the new year.
Thank you very much. I'd be happy to come back.
As always, thanks for listening, and we will catch you again next time.